So here's the preface from 2011. When I was 54 years old, I embarked on a miraculous journey that began with the publication of my first book, which is this book, the original version of Love is Letting Go of Fear. In fact, in many respects, it was a miracle the book was even written at all. Dyslexic since childhood, I entered the University of California at Berkeley in 1943, knowing that a dumbbell English course was in my future. I struggled through it and received a D. And on the final day of class, my professor told me, Jampolsky, I don't know what you're going to do in life, but for God's sake, don't ever try to write a book. I was 50 years old before I decided to no longer give my power away to other people's judgments about my limitations and do what I had been told was impossible and write a book. I am still in awe that this little book has sold millions of copies and been translated into dozens of languages. Miraculous? Absolutely. What's more, at age 85, the journey and the miracles continue for me. Since 1979, the book has grown wings of love that have taken it to just the right people at precisely the right time in their lives. It seems as though the angels have been hovering from above, guiding it to those who are in need of its very simple message. Over the years, I've been fortunate enough to hear from readers who have opened their hearts and changed their lives. Their stories are, to me, miraculous, and I would like to share a few with you that have come my way. The first edition of Love is Letting Go of Fear had been out for several months and was selling steadily, but modestly, when I received a telegram from a person I had never met. His name was Orson Bean, a talented actor and television personality. The telegram simply said, "Watch Johnny Carson tonight." Although I rarely stayed up late, I did that night. At one point during the interview, Mr. Bean pulled a copy of the book from his pocket, saying that it had changed his life. Changed mine. From the next day onward, Love is Letting Go of Fear began its climb up the bestseller list. Since then, whenever people ask me who my public relations person is, I always answer, God. A number of years ago, at an event hosted by the Center for Attitudinal Healing, I was approached by a woman who shared the following story. Many years earlier, my son, Lee, and her son had been close friends in high school. Lee threw a party one night at my office when I was out of town. There was music and alcohol, and the party got a little wild. At one point, her son became a little unsteady on his feet and crashed into some bookshelves, whereupon a book toppled from the shelf and hit him in the head. The book was Love is Letting Go of Fear. He was attracted to the illustrations and decided to take it home. It's really cute illustrations. When his mother found the book in his room a month or so later, she decided to read it. At that time, she was going through some major life changes, and she said the book changed her life, and she wanted to thank me for writing it all these years later. A book will come to a person when he or she is ready for its message, and often it will come in an amazing way. The truth also comes to people, ready or not, in some pretty amazing ways. I decided to phone my son Lee just to remind him that the truth will always come out eventually, even if it's years and years after the fact. It has also been gratifying to learn that Love is Letting Go of Fear, love's influence has traveled the globe. When teaching in Iran several years later, we were surprised and delighted to learn that Love is Letting Go of Fear and 5 of our other books had been translated and published in Farsi. and were circulating throughout the country. Although these were clearly bootlegged editions, we decided not to make an issue of that fact. It is more important to us that the book's message reaches those who are in need. Following a lecture at the University of Tehran, an Iranian professor shared his personal story with us. He and his wife had had a most difficult marriage, marred by constant arguing. At wit's end, he was seriously considering divorce. Although he loved his wife deeply, he yearned for a more peaceful existence and simply couldn't envision a calm relationship with her. One day, while browsing in a bookstore, he came across a pirated copy of Love is Letting Go of Fear. As he spoke to us, he spread his arms wide and, smiling, said that simply reading the book was the first step towards saving his marriage. Diane and I made many trips to Russia when it was still the former Soviet Union. During one of our visits to Moscow, as was typical at the time, we were assigned a translator and a guide from the Soviet Tourist Bureau. What we didn't know then was that they actually were KGB agents. We brought with us a number of Russian language editions of both Love is Letting Go of Fear and a mini course for life. Each day, our translator asked us for a few copies, which we gladly turned over to her. As the days passed, she asked for more and more copies. Our supply was starting to run low, so we finally asked her where the books were going. So she explained that they were being used to teach English to other translators, agents, because the concepts were so new and interesting to them. Needless to say, we were delighted that the study of English was being supplemented by the study of practical spiritual principles that emphasize love and forgiveness. Love is Letting Go of Fear has found its way into the hands of people of all ages and all walks of life. Following a talk in Florida recently, a 10-year-old girl spoke with us. Her parents' decision to divorce had been deeply upsetting and very confusing. Looking for someone to blame, she wasn't sure which parent to be angry with, so she decided to be angry at them both. One afternoon, at a friend's house, she saw a copy of Love is Letting Go of Fear and borrowed it. The book's message brought her peace of mind, even though her parents continued to threaten each other with divorce. Eventually, she gave the book to her parents to read in the hope it would help them heal their relationship. She then introduced her mother and father, who were standing nearby, still married, and who enthusiastically validated their daughter's story. An inmate in Arizona wrote me an angry letter claiming that Love is Letting Go of Fear was the worst book he had ever read. He went on to say that if I were in solitary confinement and had been beaten by guards, I would never be able to forgive. He ended his letter with the accusation that I must be some flaky shrink from California who couldn't possibly know what real life was all about. I responded, not with self-righteous indignation, but with an open-minded, non-defensive letter, and so began a lively, mutual, rewarding correspondence. While on a lecture tour in Arizona, I arranged to visit him in prison. During our meeting, he told me that after rereading the book, he realized it wasn't prison that kept him in bondage. It was the fear he carried in his own mind that was keeping him incarcerated. Sometime later, following his release, he began the process of forgiving the significant people in his life. This enabled him to launch a vocation of working with people who had been incarcerated and who were facing death from terminal illness. After a recent lecture on Maui, a woman came up to us in tears. She explained that in 1980, her husband had had an affair. Her anger had been like molten lava. She had bought a gun with the intention of shooting him. A plan that would have irrevocably changed her life. The same day, a friend gave her a copy of Love is Letting Go of Fear. Despite her pain, she read the book and abandoned her dangerous impulse and altered the course of her life in a positive direction. A man attending a workshop conducted by the Center for Attitudinal Healing shared the following story. As an adult, he made the upsetting discovery that his father had been a member of the Nazi Party and served in the SS during World War II. Reading Love is Letting Go of Fear had helped him make the necessary steps to get past the shame and anguish and forgive his father for being an active participant during such a cruel period in history. As a result, he decided to make a radical change and gave up his business for a very different kind of vocation. Of all things, he became a clown, explaining that the best way he could think of to heal the world was by making his life's work about bringing other people joy and laughter. He described his costume to me, including a huge pair of extra long shoes. When I asked him why the extra long shoes, his immediate reply was so my father can walk along with me in my shoes as we heal the world together. In 2009 alone, this book and its mighty wings landed in Mongolia, Cameroon, Nigeria, Mali, Romania, and so many other places. A woman in Mongolia went through the experience of her deeply loved brother committing suicide. It was a devastating experience that left her deeply depressed. She wrote that after reading Love is Letting Go of Fear, she found the tools to heal herself and her life changed. Since then, she has started the Center for Attitudinal Healing in Mongolia and wants to devote her life to helping others as a way to continue to heal herself. A man in Cameroon, Central Africa, wrote that he had developed 3 businesses and was quite successful. He had a wife and 2 children. He became addicted to drugs, and his wife and children left him, and his businesses collapsed. In his words, he became a derelict. One Sunday, while taking a walk on and out of the way country road, he came across an old man selling used books from a small cart. He saw the title, Love is Letting Go of Fear, and with the very last few coins he had, he purchased the book. It became like a Bible to him, and he proceeded to read it more than a dozen times. He stopped using drugs, and his wife and children returned to him. He went on to start a health clinic for her and a new business for himself. He said he was so transformed by the concepts and experience of the book that he has started attitudinal healing support groups and is now in the process of starting a center for attitudinal healing in Cameroon. The former ambassador to Mexico from Nigeria visited the Kesura in Mexico City, the first center of attitudinal healing in Mexico to date. More than 20 Mexican cities have centers or groups now. There she located this book and found it began to nourish her spiritually.